Food allergies can be serious stuff. Usually we discover we're allergic to a food after we've ingested it. That can be uncomfortable at best and fatal at worst. We can get rashes, an upset stomach, diarrhea, or have breathing problems. Today we're going to learn about nut allergies, one of the most severe allergies in the world. In the early 20th century, a scientist named Charles Richet showed it was very difficult to create an anaphylactic response to foods that were eaten. Our stomach acids neutralize most allergic substances in foods. In ancient Egyptian times, anaphylactic responses were recorded in artwork on the walls of Egyptian tombs, but these were pictures depicting responses to bee stings, not food. In case you're not familiar with anaphylactic, it means a whole body response to a substance where the throat closes up, breathing becomes labored, and the person becomes panicky. There can be a rash as well. Charles Richet and his contemporary Richard Otto showed it's possible to produce an allergic reaction to any protein by injecting it rather than eating it. Injecting foods by needle is not natural to humans, so it's our body's immune response. In the early 1900s, peanut oil was added to vaccine serums in order to extend their shelf life and make them more effective long term. The virus or disease that was injected was very mild when the peanut oil was added. Unfortunately, there's always a risk to an allergy or a sensitivity in the body to peanuts and other nuts. Early on, only 10% of the population was reacting to the injected serums. Sometimes it was mild, and occasionally they were fatal. When people have repeated vaccinations, the chance of a response is higher. The development of the EpiPen in the 1980s proved to be a gold mine for the pharmaceutical industry. It is the only known antidote to an anaphylactic attack. An EpiPen has the hormone epinephrine in it, which is a chemical that narrows blood vessels and opens the airways into the lungs. In the past 30 years, there has been an increase in allergies across the board. This is due to an increase in vaccine scheduling in children. Most people who have a peanut allergy also have an allergy to at least one tree nut. Let's look at the macronutrients in peanuts and tree nuts to see the similarities and differences. Peanuts are actually peas, a ground nut, in the same family as legumes. The peanut pod or shell is ready to be picked when the outside is dried and brown like the shells of tree nuts. Peanuts have 66% fat, 17% carbs, and 17% protein. There are more varieties of tree nuts and there are more differences in the macronutrients. Tree nuts have 69 to 90% fat, with the composition of protein and carbs making up the rest of the percentages. There's more fat in tree nuts and ground nuts, and we can also taste this. As stated earlier, if someone's allergic to nuts, there's a chance they're allergic to a tree nut as well. And if someone's allergic to a tree nut, there's a chance of being allergic to other kinds of tree nuts. To test for peanut allergies, an allergy clinic will draw blood or perform a skin test. If you have a low response or negative response but have never eaten that nut before, an allergist may consider oral food challenges under their supervision. When assessing food labels on products, you have to learn how to read the entire label. Sometimes there's peanut oil in refined vegetable oils, but the label will only say refined vegetable oils. We must look carefully to see if there's any sentences on the label that indicate there are soy, nuts, wheat, egg, etc. Label reading is key. Some public and private schools have a no nut policy, but in my experience, I haven't met anyone who has had an allergic reaction from other people eating nuts in the same room. One study showed that only bars and restaurants that had nuts and nutshells all over the floors and they let the guests shell their nuts and throw them on the floor had actual particles of nuts floating in the air that could be ingested by someone who's allergic. According to the American College of Allergy, Asthma, and Immunology, peanuts and other food allergies have increased in the past 10 years, about 21%. This can be quite challenging for families, especially around social events. But There is hope. Recent clinical trials in the United States and Australia have been experimenting with different types of oral reintroduction therapies. Stanford Medical School in Northern California has been using oral immunotherapy for a decade. This is a way to desensitize patients slowly and safely, but it takes trust, commitment, and patience. It can be scary to eat things that you're allergic to. That's exactly what patients are doing under strict supervision. They start at a quarter of a peanut and slowly work up to 16 peanuts a day. The maintenance is about 1 peanut a day. In Melbourne, Australia, the research includes reintroducing peanuts into the diet by adding peanut powder with probiotic powder into other foods. The Murdoch Children's Research Institute has seen 2/3 of children treated with this approach successfully desensitized, even years after the treatment ended. The takeaways for this nut allergy phenomenon video are: if you think you or a loved one has a nut allergy, get tested by an allergy clinic with blood work, scratch testing, and discuss elimination or reintroduction protocols. Read food labels in their entirety. Remember, knowledge is power. There is hope and help out there for folks who have peanut and tree nut allergies.